welcome to The Point. It is Wednesday, April 20th, 2022. Thank you to those of you joining us on the GBN Grenada Broadcasting Network's Facebook page, the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel, the website www.gbn.gd, GBN TV channel 7, 11, and 20. Good morning to the listeners of Classic 105.5, 105.9, and thank you so very much for joining us on To The Point once again. I am Blossom, and I'll be your host this morning, and facilitating this interview with the Chief Education Officer in the Ministry of Education, Miss Angella Finlay. She's our guest this morning, so thank you very much, Miss Finlay, and thank you for joining us on the program. Appreciate your appearance this morning, ma'am. Can you hear me, Miss Finlay?
Good morning.
There we go. You're hearing me? I've seen a little lag.
Yes, good morning.
All right, you're a little bit low. Let me see if I can turn you up just a bit. Say something again, Miss Finlay.
Good morning.
There we go. All right, much better. All right, so thank you once again, Miss Finlay, for joining us. We're going to get right into the discussion this morning because we have a lot to talk and think about this morning. But let's first of all start with what I know a lot of parents are or the information they're seeking in relation to the reopening of schools. The third term of the school year is scheduled to start on Monday, God willing. But it's not usual reopening. Of course, we're in the midst of a global health pandemic, even though some of our restrictions have been lifted. But still, there are things that we need to keep in mind as parents, as students, teachers, principals, ministry as well. So just speak to us about what is expected for the reopening of the new school term on Monday, God willing.
Good morning, Gain Blossom, and good morning to all our viewers, our listeners of To The Point. It's still the Easter season, even though the date of the resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ is gone. But I don't think it's too late to say happy and blessed Easter to everyone.
Appreciate many happy returns.
As it relates to the reopening of school, yes, we do appreciate that the restrictions have been lifted, the regulations, emergency powers, and so has been lifted. But as advised by our Chief Medical Health Officer, everyone is encouraged to exercise personal responsibility for their safety. Hence, this is our appeal from the Ministry of Education to parents, principals, and staff of schools that whatever they do, they must take what is the required precautions to preserve life, to preserve livelihood. And so those who are comfortable to wear masks, we still encourage them to continue wearing the mask and whatever other precautions they can take in terms of wearing of the mask, sanitizing of the hands, and even vaccinations. So these are all up to individuals, but not something that we can impose on anyone else at this point in time. So school reopens, there is no longer any distancing also in the classroom. Yes, no mandatory protocols for the functioning of schools, save and except those which are enshrined within the Education Act.
How can, even with the lifting of restrictions, like you just mentioned, there's no more social distancing, no more mask mandate, although you can wear it as well. But how can we ensure that our children are kept safe, as well as our teachers and principals? Because COVID-19 is still very much out there, and with the lifting of restrictions, anything can happen at any time. So how can we ensure that my child is safe when I send him or her to school without these restrictions in place?
So again, as you said, it is a case of personal responsibility. So whichever the elements of the protocol, which would be for personal safety, the wearing of the mask, the sanitizing of the hands. Yes, and if you don't do anything that you don't need to do. Yes, save and accept those that are enshrined in the Act. We expect, the Act continues to be our guiding document. So parents too, If the children can wear masks, they're encouraged to continue to provide them with masks, if they feel so comfortable to do. Other than that, it's the other person being responsible for themselves.
As well as the protocols being lifted and our students going back to school, there was once a call for parents to encourage their children or bring their children to get vaccinated. Any idea as to how many of our children who are eligible have been vaccinated?
No, we have not been purposed to collect this data up to this present time.
And going into the third term of the year, it's also exam term for our CSEC, CAPE, and even CPEA students. How have preparations been for that and ensuring that all is in place for our students to have all that they need and preparing them for such an important part of their educational journey?
Okay, so at the school level, teachers, I must say, the reports coming out from their observations and the supervision by officers of the Ministry of Education has been very encouraging, with principals and teachers going the extra mile to ensure they can break back in some measure on the time that students spend the loss due to the students being away from school. There are some challenges still with students not yet readjusting to being back in school. But for the most part, the preparation of SBAs and other assessments have been going according to schedule. So far, we have no report of anything untoward in that.
Like you mentioned, they have been out of the classroom. It's been a kind of past 2 years for our students. Any concerns about their performance or expected performances in these exams, knowing that they've been out of the classroom for a lot or a great portion of the last 2 years?
It is often said that, Grenada is a land of great resilience. Notwithstanding, we do recognize at the Ministry of Education that students this year are somewhat more challenged than our exam cohorts for the past 2 years. And when we think of what happened in 2020 for our students at the grade 6 and Form 5 and TAM-CC level, they were almost at the end of their preparation for exams. Traditionally, just around the end of March into April, students have their final assemblies and they go home. They may return to the school for, mopping up work, but they tend to say their farewells around end of March, beginning of April. So school closing on the 13th of March in 2020 meant that our exit grade students were basically at the end of their preparation. Now we go forward to what happened in 2021. In 2021, so the results were commendable for us. We had pass rates over 80% and so forth for that year. We did much better than many of our regional counterparts in that we were also able to have our exit grades, the Form 5s, return in June to do a final reorientation to exams because we didn't have the anticipated spike in COVID cases as existed for our other member states, neighboring countries. 2021, again, we opened back in 2021, we had that measure of stability, not many cases, and we're able to have our exit grades in again. So that group of students too, while they did have some disruptions in the previous year as Form 4 students, grade 5 students, they were able to get back in and have a fair measure of support. And again, the results, although it could have been better in many regards, it still had to be considered very commendable compared to what happened for regional counterparts. Now, this year, what do we have? We have at Form 5 and grade 6 level, a group of students that were really placed on the back burner over the past few years because they would have been around grade 3 and around grade 4 at that time. And given each year we start to bring back in as priority the exit grades, these Form 3s did not benefit from coming back to get the amount of tuition that other students, the grade 5 students, Form 5 students and so had. And then, lo and behold, now come September, we were dealing with a spike. So now that they were in the exit grades, they have the benefit of being back in totality. They too now had to manage with this online learning and face the physical distancing and so forth. So of all the groups of students, exit grades that have passed through this pandemic era, this current exit grade students are the ones who have been most challenged to complete the requisite amount of work for successful completion. So hearing from our the supervisory officers and even teachers themselves that students are making good progress, we have to commend them all, both for what has happened while they were online and what is happening now as they have gone back to face-to-face learning. It is a challenge because every day lost from a classroom is a day too much. It's a day when work could have been done to a more excellent order. All research points to the importance of that face-to-face interaction. Even though things can happen in the remote realm, there is that benefit when persons can interact face-to-face and handle things in a shared space. So it is a challenge, but we are hopeful that students will be able to pull through and still turn out what we can consider commendable performances.
What sort of support has the ministry lent to these students in terms of maybe extra classes or extra credit work or so to prepare them or at least get them up to mark from the days that they missed in the classroom?
Okay, so up to this point, for the most part, the schools have taken that responsibility for preparing those students, for the work. I'm noting that they were not totally detached, but were engaged with their teachers online. Teachers have, up to this point, taken that responsibility to give them the support online, and our officers go into the various schools and lend their support both in terms of the review of their projects and also with pedagogy as well, actually doing classes. We do have curriculum officers that are going into some schools and actually lending their expertise in lesson delivery as well.
Our CPEA students would need maybe a little extra care and attention because of their age compared to our CAPE and CSEC students. Preparing for the CPEA exams, what has that been like?
Okay. Now, one of the things that we do try to instill in parents, in the students themselves, in teachers, but I say the younger ones, is the taking of a more broad-based approach to preparation for CPEA. Some persons may ask, when does that preparation begin? And I say it begins under the ministry's purview from the time those students enter into preschool. This approach has been embraced by many schools at this point, I must say. Okay, whereby you do not wait until students get close to the exit grade to start giving them a project to do, to start giving them a little bit of research, a book report. These are all things that can be and should be embraced from preschool all the way through. This is what makes it easier to manage crises when you have disruptions in our education sector. And this is something that many schools, I just pass on the street and I meet students as well, and I ask them how they're doing, and they will tell me, what grade they're in when I look at their size and so on. So I ask them to relate to me what's, today in school like, how is school? And they will speak to these sort of things. So a kindergarten child, a preschool child can do a book report. Even though they cannot write it, they can give an oral review of a book. What did they like most about this piece of writing? What was their favorite character in the story? So I think building this into our system and really having it across all levels would really make for resilience in times of disruptions to education. So this has been happening for schools. And as I said, when we think of bringing students out, teachers would say, we want to stay with them. We have some teachers who are saying, I'm not going to take vacation, I'm not going to go on pre-retirement. No, I want to stay with the students because I want them to be to the end of July, when they would go on vacation. They're prepared to even waive some of their, retirement dues and all of that. So there's a lot of really great things happening for education, not a positive signs. And we're very thankful for principals, for teachers, for parents who are collaborating to ensure that children get the best this time in their educational journey. So I should say that CPA will be on Thursday, May 12th and Friday, May 13th this year. That's CPA.
And before we go to the break, something I just remembered in relation to CSEC. I recall seeing some information based on or owing to what has happened over the past 2 years. CXC has maintained its cutback to the SBA requirements. Do you see this having a positive result for our students, not having, what should I say, that much pressure? And the leeway that CXC has made for the students because of the disruption in classroom learning?
Okay. In all that CXC has offered, there is something called that examination board, which has to oversee the cuts that are made to ensure that the integrity of the exam is preserved. And so far, this has been established. So the adjustments that have been made, while they would result in a reduction of, let's say, the number of SBAs, there are critical elements that must be monitored and maintained throughout all of it. Now, one has to appreciate that when SBAs are done, it's a way of reiterating their practice and the exposure to real life applications and so forth. So the more practice that they can get, augurs well for the student. But given that we have limited time now, CXC has to, while not saying restricting how many SBAs would be done in the school, they are saying, okay, we'll accept this much for our auditing purposes, for our assessment purposes. But there is no cap on what a school can do in terms of giving children the exposure to develop competence in subject matter.
And I recall I believe it was last year, when they implemented, or they really stressed the use of the electronic usage for the CAPE students, as well, I believe, as CXC, the e-testing for CXC students. Has this affected how our students prepare for the exams, as well as the results that we've gotten from last year and what we expect this year?
Okay. We have not seen any negative effect of the e-testing on our students. And truth be told, across our schools, children have had fairly good access to ICT education from Form 1 all the way up, EDPM, that's electronic document preparation. So again, prior to COVID, Grenada had embraced e-testing as far as our infrastructure would allow, so that we have had all subjects with, except English, maths, and the larger papers, they had been e-testing for the paper 1. So this has continued through COVID, and it augured well for our students. They didn't have to be handling papers, as you know, in the traditional exam setting. And the paper 2 is still pretty much still done paper-based. But we are putting steps in place to ensure that soon our students will be able to embrace the paper too electronically as well.
All right, Ms. Finlay, let's take a quick break in the conversation and pay some bills, and then we're going to come back. We are speaking with the Chief Education Officer in the Ministry of Education, Angella Finlay. We're talking education, preparing for exams, reopening of schools scheduled for Monday, God willing. Much more is straight ahead. It's To The Point on Classic 105 and GBN.
Meet the Grenadian-born English football legend who played for Arsenal, Cambridge United and West Bromwich Albion. It's the Brendan Baxton story on Interesting Grenadians, Wednesday, April 20th at 8 p.m. on GBN TV and social media platforms. Mark the date, Wednesday, April 20th, 8 p.m. on GBN. See you then.
The Fed because I turn my GPS on. The party pumper they call me. Once the Fed is on, I bet you I will be right there. The cooler done set. Pocket check so I feeling irate. Destination check so you know we out for the party.
Protect yourself and our community from COVID-19. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. If soap and water are not available, use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer with at least 70% alcohol. Use a tissue when blowing your nose, sneezing, or coughing. Immediately discard the tissue properly and wash or sanitize your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Let's do our part to ensure that each and every Grenadian remains healthy. To stay up to date, visit the Government of Grenada's webpage or the Ministry of Health's Facebook page. For more information, contact the Ministry of Health's hotline by calling 53-VIRUS. This has been a public service announcement brought to you by the Ministry of Health.
Stomp out careless or intentional bushfires, dead out. Youths, hunters, smokers, let's prevent bushfires. Here's why.
Yeah, bushfires. The shoreline's wet, crops should be bushfires. Can't eat the food, scarcity, threatened biodiversity, cause water shortage, water calamity. Bushfires in watersheds deplete water quality, threaten property, life and security. Bushfires set intentionally, water insanity.
Bushfires can cost millions in losses annually and are often caused by careless or intentional actions indictable under the law. Forests are life-giving. Save them. A message from the Fire Department of the Royal Grenada Police Force and the Caribbean Open Trade Support.
Welcome back to The Point. We're speaking with Chief Education Officer in the Ministry of Education, Angella Finlay. Before we go to our viewers and listeners, Ms. Finlay, there are some important dates that our students, parents, guardians, teachers, principals need to keep in mind in relation to our regional assessments as well as the local MCT assessment. What are those dates?
Okay, so both the CSEC and the CAPE examinations are set to commence on the 2nd May. That's the theoretical exams. For some of the practical subjects, the assessments have already begun, such as the physical education practicals, and that's on stream, that's going on this week. And other assessments for the practical subjects like food and nutrition and health home management, they have already started. But the theoretical work assessments begin on the 2nd of May. For CSEC, it's due to end on the 3rd of June, and for CAPE, the 10th of June. Then we have the CCSLC exams. That's the minimum competency assessment, which is a regional assessment for students at the Form 3 level. That begins on the 6th of June, Monday, 6th June, and should end on Thursday, the 9th of June. And then on Wednesday, the 8th of June, we will have our MCTs for the primary school, that's grades 2, 4, and 5. And we really encourage parents to support their children, parents and guardians, their children, their wards, in preparation for all of these assessments. And I must also emphasize the importance of students attending for the CCSLC and the MCT assessments, because these exams will give the ministry an indication of the extent to which there may be learning loss for students, given that they were experiencing all the disruptions with the COVID pandemic. So that's the schedule of exams for this year.
All right, now let's go to our viewers and listeners who may have comments, questions, queries, concerns. This is your chance to ask Ms. Finlay, respectfully so. The landline number, 435-2041. That's also the WhatsApp number. You can ask your questions. You can call us if you'd like, and I would ask them for you. Those of you on social media, you can post them on the Facebook page. We are currently streaming on the GBN Production YouTube channel. GBN Production YouTube channel. So if you'd like to post your questions there as well, you can do so. There is a question, well, a comment really on Facebook. No, let me go to the phone lines and then I'm going to get to the Facebook comment. Good morning, caller. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Blossom.
Morning.
Good morning to Mrs. Finlay. I'm calling with regards to the CSEC exams. I'd like to know whether or not these exams would be sat on electronically, or which ones would be sitting electronically. There was also some concerns about the devices running a bit slow. Would these devices be used to sit the exams if they are being done electronically? Thank you.
Thank you very much, caller. Ms. Finlay?
Okay, maybe I can start with the last one. There was a testing of the reliability of the systems for the administration of the electronic assessment just about 2 weeks ago, and that went off very well in all centers, both in terms of the connectivity and the time for the students to complete the assessments. They were all accomplished, and the reports are that things are well in place for the administration of the exams. In schools where there were challenges with devices, arrangements have been made to augment devices in those centers with reserves that are kept at the Ministry of Education for that purpose. And should there be any glitches with the administration of the e-papers on the day in question, CXE is providing the paper-based format of the exams for use in emergency.
And any idea which of the exams will be done electronically or so for CSEC?
Right, so it will be all of the paper ones, except for the larger papers like English, mathematics, social studies, okay, these big exams. The others, the all paper ones would be done electronically.
And English and maths and so will be done paper-based?
Paper-based, yes,
okay.
Due to the numbers, yes.
All right. There's a comment on Facebook. Somebody says, acknowledging that these students have been most impacted, it is duly noted that they have had the least amount of concessionary provisions to help them through. Agree or disagree?
Well, in terms of concessionary terms, what I can say is that the features that were put in place for managing and supporting students in an emergency. They continue this year for students again. Even though, for example, there was the facility for delaying or deferring exams, and that was offered to students in Grenada over the past 2 years. We didn't have many students. I think maybe just about 7 students took up that option. Okay, and they came out with commendable performances. There were no major disappointments in terms of how students performed. There were a few due to illness or so that they didn't complete one aspect of the paper. But the provisions for CXC has been established over the years with that major that aspect of consideration, knowing, for example, that we are in the hurricane belt, and hurricanes can come as early as May. So that amount of mechanism built in and cushioned with the added ones, I do believe that it is sufficient. It has proven adequate for Grenada so far. This year, CXC reiterated that in terms of deferrals, students can defer up to the morning of the exam, up to the day of the exam, once they do not enter the examination hall and handle the paper, they can defer. For Grenada, of course, we continue to encourage students to be mindful of our limitations in terms of space. Having students return for a second year in a secondary school is not always possible due to restrictions on space. So we do encourage students to do their all, work with their teachers, cooperate, collaborate. Yes, it means in some cases the breaking back is on how much time they can spend in recreation, but we are comfortable that there is sufficient hours in the day that students can get some recreation and still balance with a bit more time given to their examination work, preparation for the examinations.
All right, let's go back to the landline. Good morning, caller.
Yes, good morning, Citizen West. Greetings and greetings to your guests. Now, can your guests hear me? I'd like to confirm that, please.
Can you hear Ms. Finlay?
Not right now. I'm not hearing anything.
Well,
right
no, but
now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I heard the good morning.
Very well. Greetings. Good morning. Listen, I'm happy that I've caught a Ministry of Education official. Indeed, you're speaking about education of our regular citizens, but there are a bunch of people in this country with visual impairment. And I'm interested in the quality of education that they get. Thus, I ask the following questions. Can you, Ms. Finlay, give as succinctly as possible, I suppose, the people of this country some idea what is happening in, quote-unquote, the Resource Center for the Blind, which is a department of the Ministry of Education, as established, and I found it in the budget. In other words, the establishment. We've been hearing a lot of things about them, all negative, unfortunately. But can you tell us something about their operations, their staffing, the services offered, the achievement over the past years, and what we look forward to getting for the people with visual impairment in this country as it relates to the education into the future? Thank you very much and have a nice day, will you?
Thank you very much, Citizen Rollo. P.S. Sorry, see you.
Okay. Right. I am very happy to respond to that question because in Grenada, we have been blessed by a team of persons who are the frontline providers for support to the vision impaired students. We have made significant strides in that regard. Prior to, maybe 5 years or more ago, we had students attending school at what is called the Center for the Blind. But we have taken a giant step forward so that students no longer attend school there, but we operate with inclusion. So all students who are deemed to be visually impaired are actually incorporated into mainstream schools, regular schools. So it's inclusion now, but we still have a staff at that center, principal and teachers, and they provide itinerant services to the students at the various primary, secondary, and even tertiary institutions. So we have teachers who have come out from that level of support. Yes, visually impaired teachers, they are now serving in mainstream schools. Some are serving back as itinerant teachers. And they have also been supported. They are supported every year via CXC. So you have examinations being prepared in a modality to assist those students who are visually impaired. Yes, in terms of the numbers, I do not have the figures before me, but as I said, all students who are of school age and are able to access regular school with no other impediments, they are part of our regular mainstream education.
All right, I have a WhatsApp question. Somebody on WhatsApp is asking, what's the status of the committee evaluating TAMCC? There was no mention by the minister regarding... Right, okay, so that's a separate question. So first, what's the status of the committee evaluating the TMI Show Community College?
Well, that committee, that is the work is in progress, yes. The committee is still working. At my level, I have not been privy to a final report just yet.
And the same person inquires... Okay, sorry. The same person inquires... there was no mention by the minister or ministry regarding the arrest and charge of Claude Douglas. What measures have been taken to prevent, if possible, this from reoccurring?
Okay, so this matter is a court matter, and for that reason, I'm not at liberty to make any comments on that situation at this time.
And somebody on WhatsApp again is asking, can you repeat the dates for the MCT for grades 4 and 5, please?
Okay, MCT for grades 2, 4, and 5, June 8th.
June 8th. All right. Let me make sure there are no further questions on the social media before I get back to my own. In relation to TAMCC, somebody on Facebook is inquiring, how long has the committee been working re-TAMCC?
Last year, October, I think that's when they were officially commissioned.
Do they have a cutoff date, a due date as to how long the committee would run for?
Okay. So the supervision and management of TAMCC doesn't fall under my direct purview. So for that reason, I have not been, as I said, monitoring very closely the parameters or the scope of work for that committee.
All right, let's take a final break, and then we're going to come back and wrap up the discussion, speaking with Angella Finlay, the Chief Education Officer in the Ministry of Education. To the point, we'll be right back.
Meet the Grenadian-born English football legend who played for Arsenal, Cambridge United, and West Bromwich Albion. It's the Brendan Baxton story on Interesting Grenadians, Wednesday, April 20th at 8 p.m. on GBN TV and social media platforms. Mark the date, Wednesday, April 20th, 8 p.m. on GBN. See you then.
GPS on, the party pumper they call me. Once the fete is on, I bet you I will be riding. The cooler done set, pocket check so I feeling irate. Destination check, so you know we out for the party.
Welcome back to the point. It is now 15 minutes on to 10 o'clock. We're speaking with the Chief Education Officer in the Ministry of Education, Angella Finlay. Ms. Finlay, let's go to now a topic that has generated a lot of discussion in recent times, that of violence among our youths, our school-aged children. Over the past, let's say, a month or so, we've seen a lot of videos surfacing of children engaging in violent activities. And there have been lots of concern about how our stakeholders can assist in this. So from the ministry's point of view, how can the ministry assist in helping our children deal with their anger, deal with their anxiety, help lessen the occurrence of such violent activities taking place?
Okay, so we would appreciate that some of the situations that degenerate into violence and crime are very complex. And complex problems require great collaboration. Currently, officers of the Ministry of Education are working with other stakeholders to come up with a sort of multi-pronged approach to treating with that issue. As it relates to schools at the school level, again, I must commend principals for the heightened level of proactivity that they have been taking to nip small problems in the bud. As one principal said to me, it's unfortunate, but the things that are happening in the school that are confrontational tend to stem from problems among the adults, the parents in the community, and they come into the school compound. So at this point in time, I want to make that special appeal to parents to avoid bringing what may be called adult issues to the fore in the presence of the children. Yes, as I say, let children be children, let children grow, and to find ways away from the children to deal with areas of conflict that arise within the family as adults. There are some things which children, for the most part, become overburdened with unnecessarily. And this is affecting their ability to perform and focus in school as they should. Okay, for the parent who would say, okay, go with something to school, and when so-and-so child come close to you, do them that in retaliation. We really appeal to them to desist from that approach to resolving conflict in the community. Because at the end of the day, it may be one or more persons, including their own family members, who have to suffer to what could be considered unnecessary incarceration, injuries that become life-threatening, and even death. So while we are working at the administrative level with stakeholders, I take this opportunity to appeal to parents, guardians, older siblings, and so to allow their young ones, their young family members who are students to enjoy the best that school has to offer in a violent-free environment.
All right, let me go back to the phone lines. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Russell.
Morning, Ms. Ramah. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. Good morning to Mrs. Finlay. This last question you posed concerning violence among students, Russell, this is not national. This is global. And because it is global, I am seeing it as a spiritual problem. It is not just what happens in the home. They contribute. But the main thing that's happening is a spiritual problem. And nations need to deal with this thing from a spiritual point of view. Now, in Jamaica, I heard somebody suggest that they bring back prayer in schools and bring the gospel in schools, because the children need to be controlled by the Spirit of God and not the spirit of the Antichrist. This is the time that we are living in. We need to teach our children about God. We need to get them to know God, to know there is a God, to know God loves them, God cares for them, and they must seek to know Him and to please Him. When they know that they have somebody beyond human looking at them, care for them, it would give them a different perspective in life. They would teach them something different. And I think as a nation, we need to bring back prayer in school. But when I was a child, we had prayer in school every single morning. The first time I heard about Corinthians 13 was in the St. John's Anglican School. Because the principal made sure he taught us about God to make us know there is a God. We must fear God and we must walk according to the will and purpose of God.
Okay.
So this is what we need in the schools. We need to bring the gospel. Now, I'm not talking about religion. I'm not even talking about denomination. I'm talking about bringing the children to know their Creator, getting them to know God and to have a relationship with Jesus Christ. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Finlay?
Well, all I can say but endorse the comments in terms of the involvement of God. Yes, our anthem says ever conscious of God. Yes, and being conscious of God and giving Him His due place in our lives can really turn a lot of mountains into molehills. Yes, so again, that's encouraging words from that caller.
Somebody on WhatsApp pointed out in relation to the Claude Douglas case, you were not asked about the case. You were asked about measures to avoid such occurrences at TAMCC or other institutions. You are at liberty to speak to that. Any measures the ministry intends to put in?
As it relates to any issue around unnecessary, improper conduct of teachers. At the TAMCC level, there's a TAMCC policy. At the ministry level, we have the Education Act. Now, we also have the Child Protection Act. These are measures that are there to deter, but you would appreciate with everything that is there to deter, those things will happen. So, when these things happen, there are consequences for persons who choose to ignore whatever are their rights, their responsibilities. Yes, there are consequences.
All right. Let me scroll before I wrap up. All right. Any final comments, statements you'd like to make, Ms. Finlay, as we wrap the program this morning?
Okay. If I can just go back to the examinations. I want to speak briefly on the CPA placement. In terms of placement, we want to remind parents at this stage that by now, as from last year, the ending of last term, all parents should have submitted through their schools their desired placement for their students, school choices, 5 choices. Those should have been in order of priority or preference. The placement policy is in place. Denominational schools have that facility to get up to 30% of students placed based on the religion. And the rest, we have 200 being placed based on merit, subject to the availability of spaces. The process for transfers would be considered in very extraneous circumstances if those things are not treated with. So zoning is also part of the process. Parents who are desirous of getting a transfer out of necessity would be accommodated if space allows through an online application process. Those would be reviewed by the schools, the management and board, and recommendations would be made to the Ministry of Education. If spaces allow, those transfers will be accommodated. Looking at what happened last year, if things continue as it is, there are very slim chances of persons getting transfer once this placement process rolls out as it is documented to roll out.
All right. Ms. Finlay, I would like to thank you very much for being our guest this morning. Appreciate it to the fullest. I'm just scrolling through the social media to make sure there are no other questions. Yes. So thank you very much, Ms. Finlay, for being our guest this morning. Appreciate it. You can go back to vacationing now. Thanks for taking the break and being our guest. Enjoy the rest of your holidays.
You're welcome, and a pleasant day to everyone else. Trust that the day will go safely and satisfactorily for everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day. That was the Chief Education Officer in the Ministry of Education, Angella Finlay, our guest this morning. We thank her very much for taking a break in her vacation to be our guest. And thank you, viewers and listeners, for taking a break in your day to tune in to The Point this morning. Always in interesting and educational conversations. Hopefully our students, parents, teachers, principals got some information that they were seeking through this morning's discussion. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your wonderful Wednesday. It's now 5 minutes on to 10 o'clock. Mid-morning buzz is up next. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. Bye-bye.